Hey, what's up, gang? Alan Bishop back with the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute, your source for distilling information, whether it be on the professional side of distillation, the home distilling side of distillation, or in general, you are a fan of distillation, you want to know more about the art and the process. So just tune in here on a Sunday evening to answer a Facebook question that came in from a viewer. It's a pretty good one. So it's from Matt Lemieux. Why is it that we generally chase a higher proof on a pot still only to water that proof back down to a 40 to 50% ABV drinking range? Is it a falsehood that we need to push higher for better? What impurities are we chopping out without flavor loss? And if we are wanting a true neutral spirit, then the pot is the wrong starting point? Cheers for what I expect to be a very interesting response. These great questions, fantastic questions, in fact. So, I don't generally. So there are people who do go after those higher proofs, right? They're chasing neutral on a pot still, as you just said. And no, it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense, although it can be done. I mean, so part of it would be your definition of what exactly is a pot still, okay? And so for me, the definition of a pot still is a batch system as opposed to a continuous system, or like a coffee column. Some people choose to call some of those batch systems hybrids. And there's nothing wrong with that. To me, it's still a pot still, but pot stills have always had a number of mechanisms on them for producing higher proof. The idea that pot stills were always just pot stills without any rectification capabilities is definitely not something that's true, right? And as a distiller, I tend to think of it as these are just tools in the toolbox to do different things that you might want to do. You know, this is why, for example, with the 13 stills, Black Forest still that we're doing, myself and Jason Wade Harrell, that's why there's those options on there with a cold finger for reflux, with the two different line arms to play around with natural reflux, etc., with the gin basket. These are tools and they're options for various different kinds of spirits depending on what you want to make. When it comes to chasing a higher proof on a pot still only to water the proof back down to 40 or 50, and whether or not it's a falsehood to push higher to get better, right? It all comes down to, again, what you're trying to produce. So obviously you're going to proof down because you don't want to be drinking at 160, 170 proof if you are doing any reflux whatsoever on a pot still. You don't even really want to be drinking at 135, which should be the average proof off of most double pot still distillations from a 1075 mash bill, etc., right? So that's why you're watering it back down. The reason that we're actually using that reflux a lot of times, when those of us that are using that reflux do use it, is for one of two reasons. A, maybe you want to make something more like a traditional style vodka, which does not meet the federal standards of the TTB, right? You're going to have some residual flavor left in it. Maybe you're going to 170. You just want a lighter style, maybe a more floral style. Maybe you want to focus on those very light, sort of fruity floral elements, right? Get rid of some of the more volatile, harsher, heavier sort of stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. The other reason would be if you are making base alcohol for another product such as a gin or an absinthe in particular, where the traditional protocol, and absinthe was always made on pot stills, but where the traditional protocol is to have 170 proof alcohol to start with for your macerations. That's why we'd go for those higher proofs. The other reason might be that maybe you just want a white spirit like a corn whiskey that you don't want those heavier compounds and congeners in, that you want to be able to focus on more of the light floral fruity things that you got from fermentation using a differentiated type of yeast or whatever you're doing, and to really put the impetus on focusing on those particular compounds, right? But again, this is all about having different tools in the toolbox of the pot still. This is why I love tricloves. You can switch things out, right? You can change things up. You can add and subtract. It's like an adult erector set, right? And you know, different strokes for different folks. Different people like different things. Now, I'm not a proof chaser. I never have been. I'm not a single pass distillation guy. I occasionally have been known to run thumpers or doublers. I have been occasionally known to do some single pass stuff with plates, or I've been occasionally known with the Black Forest still playing around and getting it tuned in to do a single pass on that, just to see how it works and if people can do a single pass, because there are people out there who are going to want to do a single pass distillation, and more power to them. I am a double pot still guy most of the time, at least in the case of matured whiskeys that go into barrels, matured brandies that go into barrels, white brandies, etc. Most of the time, double pot still distillation at 135 proof on average is where I fall at. But there are rare occurrences where I may want to go again to those higher proofs. Again, with making base alcohol or with corn whiskey, traditional corn whiskey in particular, that is not a sugar shine. We've talked about this on the show before. When I want to focus on a lighter style white whiskey, or let's say, for example, muscadine grapes. Muscadine grapes, the purple muscadines, to me, they're too tannic. They create a almost artificial bubblegum sort of flavor when you double pot distill them and ferment them that way. I'm not a fan of it. But if you take those same muscadine grapes, you do a stripping run, and then you take that resultant 60 or 70 proof stripping run, low wines, put it back in the still, rectify it a little bit, and take it up to about 170, 175, maybe even up to 180, to where you're almost creating a vodka out of it, but you still have a little residual flavor. It's a good white spirit. There's nothing wrong with it, right? I'm definitely not that guy that's chasing proof just to chase proof. I don't recommend that anybody be the guy that's chasing proof to chase proof. What I would say is understand the base material you're working with, understand your fermentation methodology to get what you want out of that, and then understand how and what compounds are affected by what style of distillation, right? If you want a heavy bodied spirit for maturation, double pot still it is, right? If you want a little higher proof but with plenty of heavy duty flavor, pot and thumper it is. If you want a lighter style spirit, more floral, more fruity, maybe running a little rectification is what it is. If you want a vodka on a pot still, because a pot with a column is still a pot still, it is not a continuous column, it's not a coffee column, it doesn't work the same way at all. That tool's there for you, right guys? And that's the thing about it. There's 1,000,001 ways to do all these things. It's all about understanding what you like, the methods that work for you, that produce the spirits that you like, that match the style that you're good at producing, etc. So I think overall that's kind of where I'm at. Now, you did ask, what impurities are we chopping out without flavor loss? So you're losing some flavor, right, when you're chopping out these impurities, because those impurities are also flavor. And we talked about this in the past, positive versus negative flavors, right? And that's subjective. What you identify as a negative flavor, I might identify as a positive flavor. You might want to cut it out by raising the proof and the purity and dropping that out of suspension in the still, right? And again, there's nothing wrong with that. You don't get one without the other. The impurities and the flavor, a lot of times, are one and the same, right? Impurities, when it comes to alcohol, are water-based, because the water is what carries the flavor over. The ethanol itself has no real discernible aroma or flavor. It's just neutral alcohol, right? That neutral alcohol is there within the suspended matrix, and it's the azerotypes between the water and the impurities in that water that give you the flavor. So they're not mutually exclusive, okay? Do I think that it's wrong to chase a neutral spirit from a pot still standpoint? No, not if you have the ability to add some of those things we talked about, you know, a short little column with reflux and some plates on it. If you can get it, then yeah. And again, if you want the old school vodka, vodkas that was made in the the old Eastern European countries and Russia, Ukraine, etc. Hey, running through a pot still multiple times, ain't nothing wrong with it to get there and get that direction and have some residual flavor to it. And that's really the way that vodka was for a very, very, very long time, as far as what would have been considered vodka at that time. So I hope I answered your question. I feel like I was kind of all over the board with that, but it was a pretty intense line of questions there to get into, and a lot of subjective sort of questions. But that is my standpoint. Anything you do to modify a pot still, it's still a pot still. There's still just tools in the toolbox, right? And you pick out what spirit you want to make and what kind of profile you want from it, and you do your best to use the tools that you have at your disposal to get to the point that you want to get to. So as always, if you have any questions, reach out, bishopshomegrown@gmail.com. You can go to thealchemistcabinet.com /thewarehouse1. That's our store where you can buy my book about distillation I wrote a couple years ago. There's a follow-up coming to that. We've got brand new, one piece at a time, thermal mugs, like coffee mugs made out of stainless steel. We also have the autograph, well, I said the autograph copy of the books. We have 2 DVDs coming up, the Alan Bishop Experience Extended Edition, as well as the historic history of distilling in Hoosier-occupied northern Kentucky, southern Indiana, Black Forest of Indiana, whatever it is. DVD from the depot that's coming up on there. Working on that follow-up book. I'm repeating myself. I apologize. Anyways, guys, you know where to find me at. Leave your comments in the comment section below on YouTube. Reach out on social media, or again, bishopshomegrown@gmail.com. Love y'all. Have a great day. Later.